Dr. H. Wainhouse is the Distinguished Research Professor of Theology, Law, Culture, and Archaeology at Faith International University and Seminary in Tacoma, Washington. He and his wife, Irina, have taught and directed many tours in the Mediterranean and Middle East, including Israel, Greece, Egypt, Jordan, Italy, and Turkey, particularly with the Biblical Archaeological Society. Dr. House has taught biblical and theological studies at several universities and seminaries during a teaching career of over 50 years and has written 150 articles and 50 books, including the Evangelical Dictionary of World Religions, The Jesus Who Never Lived, Exposing False Christs and Finding the Real Jesus, the Zondervan Handbook of Biblical Archaeology, Israel, the Land and the People, an Evangelical Affirmation of God's Promises, and editor of the Nelson NKJV Study Bible and Nelson New Illustrated Bible Commentary. Dr. House is the general editor of the Evangelical Exegetical Commentary Series, 44 volumes, with Logos, Faith Life. It is the knowledge amassed from these experiences, along with the assistance of biblical scholars at a variety of universities and seminaries throughout the world, that provides the information contained in his latest project, the House Visual Study Bible Online. Thank you for joining Archaeology and the Lands of the Bible with Dr. H. Wainhouse.
And here we are again. Our life is definitely in ruins. Dr. House, how are you this evening?
Well, I'm fine, and I brought my wife along with me tonight.
All right.
All right, everybody can say hello.
Hello. Well, that's
hello,
good.
Irina.
I got to figure out where you're at now. Oh, there you are. I'm going to move you over here. And
There
we go.
Hey. Wow.
There I am. I knew I existed.
Welcome to our mess. You have to use archaeology to dig us out.
Well, there you go.
Well, you know, this webcast we do is meant to be not only informative but entertaining, and so you know, it's good to have a laugh. And I'm looking at the various people there. I'm trying to figure out who I have. There is Richard Hess. You exist. I've been trying to get you for 2 weeks, it seems like.
I'm here.
I know Richard's had some issues and that have been difficult for him, I know. And so I don't want to make light of that. But it's good to see you.
Thank you, Wayne. It's always good to see you and Irina. So.
Well, let's see. Why don't we have people introduce, since I don't think you've seen Irina before here.
Well, okay, we'll go around really quickly, but then we want to start talking to the people who may be tuning in. So I'm Don Vino, President of Midwest Christian Outreach. Next.
Hello, Irina. I'm Ruth.
Hi, Ruth.
And then we have the Colorado.
MJ. Krista.
Hi.
In the middle, the monkey in the middle is?
I'm Dr. Don Williams, Professor Emeritus of Toccoa Falls College.
Next to him is Mr. Hess.
Me?
No, Mr.
Dick Hess, right?
Yes.
No, it's me, Wayne. It's always good to see you, Wayne and Irina.
Yeah.
And then me, James, Executive Director of EMNR.
I'm Faber McMullen, and Irina and Wayne, it's good to see you guys. I haven't seen y'all. It's been at least 24 hours.
That's true.
He's our pastor.
Okay. All right, Wayne, let me bring up, do you want to start with the videos or do you want to tell us a little story before we get started?
Well, what we're going to do, let me just sort of let you know what's happening. I decided, to go through, we went all the way through Asia Minor. For those who are just sort of tuning in and finding out what's happening, we went through Asia Minor, talked a lot about with Paul and others. We've gone through Greece. We came over to Jordan, and we've been dealing with the northern Jordan portion, although we did take one time with Petra. So we've done most of Jordan, except for what we're going to talk about tonight. And I wanted everybody to know that starting next week, we're going to start in Upper Israel and start working down to a lot of cities and places and artifacts and things of that sort. And that should be very interesting to you. So, eventually we'll get to Egypt, may even go to Italy. Who knows? So anyway, it's an exciting thing to do. And we'll talk also about some archaeology, some items. I just wanted to mention one thing. I just got through putting on Facebook something because a dear friend of mine I've known for many years, and Arena's gotten to know him too, passed away a couple days ago, and I became aware of it yesterday, and that was Gabi Berkai. He's probably the top archaeologist in Israel, a person that we had such a good relationship with for decades for me, and so now this we've lost an important person in archaeology and also a dear friend. So I just want to make that comment.
Okay. So you ready to rock and roll, baby?
Ready to go. You bring it up, and I can talk about it.
Well, I bet you could talk about it.
Yeah.
Even if I didn't bring it up, I bet you could talk about it.
I can.
That's right.
Yeah. I had someone contact me today and say, can you give me an answer to a question? I said, well, of course I can give you an answer. It may not be a true answer, but it'll be interesting, I can assure you.
There you go.
Ancient city of Sodom.
Ooh, where have we heard that?
Well, that's where the old salts live, I think. There you go, Dr. House.
Yeah, okay. Let's just start up here. You can read this. I just wanted to make a comment here, and that is there are two competing. Basically, there's an alternative, but there's two competing views regarding the existence, or not the existence, but the location of Sodom. And one is called Babadra, which is down at the very bottom. Bottom is not the right word. And let's say the far south of the Dead Sea. And then there's a one that we're going to be talking about mainly tonight, although I'll say something about both. So the ancient sites of Sodom. And I'm also going to take just a moment, and I don't claim to be a scientist, so I'm not going to play like one, but I did go to a lectureship on this once a couple of years ago, and I was sort of looked up some things on it that talk about northern, what I think is Sodom, and probably the accurate location, Tal Amam. So let's look at this just a second. This becomes important, and I put my slides in a special way, as you'll see, because we see the biblical text on this, in which we have the introduction to Sodom, but there are some very important things to understand about the geographical situation there as we try to make a decision. So notice this passage in Genesis 13:1. Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him into the south. And then it talks about he's rich in livestock and silver and gold. He was doing okay. A good individual that understood how to make money.
Yep.
And so he also had a nephew, and that becomes part of the issue. He got to south as Bethel, and there he had a tent. He was between Bethel and Ai. And then it discusses some more about Abram and call on Yahweh there. And then his nephew comes to him and says, we've got a problem between our groups because, you've been proliferating and I have been, and our people who are working for us are getting together, and there's strife and so forth. And so we need to part. And so the suggestion then is that if you go to the left hand, then I will go to the right. If you go to the right, then I will go to the left. Now, that's the basic biblical text about this. But something else happens that we'll see in just a moment that changes the dynamic and opens up our discussion tonight. So I'll let you go to the next. I wanted people watching this and also in the house to sort of see the text. Now, this is a map I found actually yesterday, and I thought it enables me to do something I want to do, but it's not a great map. And the thing that says Abraham and Lot on the right, I'm not going to go and try to read that fine print for you. But I can tell you, having read it, that the person believes that Babadran is probably the right place, which is the very, very lowest portion south of the Dead Sea there. And we'll talk about that in a moment. So the reason I brought this up is because we can get some perspective that causes me to believe that probably where Steve Collins and others have claimed to be ancient Sodom, and I've been on the site, I guess, 7 different years, and so did some archaeology there. And Irene and I did it a couple of years, I think, did we? together, and you'll see that. But look at the map with me. That's what I want to put together here. It says it was between Bethel and Ai. So what I did, I went to this map and I took out some stuff and I made arrows, and there are 3 arrows here, and there's a reason for that. The top arrow goes over to the right, and it goes to the place that's known as Tahamam, or possible Sodom, and I think probably most probable. But Bethel and Ai are in the mountainous area there. You can actually look down from there. I've been between those sites. You can look down from there and see Jericho, and that becomes important because that is actually if you may not have been to Israel, but if you did, you would know that you come down the Jordan River, and it twists and turns. Although the maps never show it that much, it really does more than the maps show. Keeps on coming down to the place it gets to the very tip of going into the Salt Sea, is what they call it in the Old Testament. We call it the Dead Sea, and there's a reason why everything's dead because it's salt. But you then have some other places there I just want to mention. One is Salem. That's where Melchizedek was, and that becomes important. And also Jerusalem's going to be there. It's at the very you really can't see it well on this map. I looked for another one, but I couldn't find it. Where it's sort of over more toward the area of the Dead Sea there. And of course, on the Dead Sea, you have things like Masada and Qumran and other things. You're familiar with those terms if you've looked at this much. But you also have Hebron, which is where Abraham ended up in. Anybody here been to Hebron? Okay, one of you? Okay. Hebron's interesting. You go to Hebron, they have a large place that Abraham is said to have purchased, the right to burial from a Hittite of all people. And then you have the movement of the various people except for Rachel. Rachel is buried in. Anybody know?
Oh, is that a question? Oh, I'm sorry.
Bethlehem, good. Yes, Rachel. But everybody else is down in Hebron. And if you go down there, that big building that you see down there, which is guarded by the Israelis, by the way, is made up into 2 parts. And one part is for the Muslims, and the other is for the Jews. And so when you go there, that's sort of how it's laid out in Hebron. So that's to give you some perspective on what things are here. Now, if you look at the bottom of these arrows, you'll notice I have one arrow moving down to Sodom there, and another moving to what is sometimes viewed as an alternative view to where Sodom is. And then you go up to the top, as I mentioned before, where you have Tahamam, or the place I think is actual Sodom. That gives you some perspective. Now, here I want to point out something before we move any farther. And that is one of the reasons why I think that probably the top site that we're going to look at is probably Sodom, is that Abraham and Lot, as we're going to see in our next slide in just a moment, Abraham and Lot, they decided to split, and then Lot went down to take the well-watered land. And if you look at the area of contemporary Tahamam,
Just come on, Jordan.
it's very, very, there's underwater that comes up from the earth, it's a very green area. It seems to fit that kind of well-watered place over against going south to the alternative site. There's another thing. Unless Abraham and Lot had telescopic vision, sort of like Superman, looking from Ai to Bethel and say you see Sodom is really a hard thing to do. Secondly, you'd also have to have X-ray vision to look through the mountains. So I just don't understand how Bethel and Ai qualify that much in reference to that what passage you see in Scripture. So that's what I want to point out to you: the difference in which way you look at which is Sodom and which is. Any questions on that I just brought up?
No. I was just looking at the text again, and in verse 16 it says, Is it 16 or 19? Wait, hold on. 16 or 10.
Well,
It
let's
says
go to that passage.
so you go by, in the same chapter, in the verse 10, 13:10 of Genesis. And Lot lifted his eyes and saw all the plain of Jordan that was well watered everywhere. That's what you just mentioned.
Yes.
Before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, that it looked like the garden of the Lord, which was referring to Eden, like the land of Egypt as you go towards Zoar. So he was able to see the plain of Jordan, right?
He could see Jordan, and that's exactly where Tahalmam is.
Right. So that kind of gives you a clue.
But the idea that he could see all the way down into the lower area, the many
Yeah.
miles you drive down there, if
That's a
you've
far
driven this
stretch.
before,
Right.
and if you could see through the mountains, I just don't know how that works with
Right,
the
right.
side.
Right. So that kind of makes sense.
But there were some people, some archaeologists who were respectable archaeologists, who identified this, and sort of everybody sort of took it for granted until
Mhm.
recent days. It's been recent years when it was decided maybe it should be an alternative.
Right.
And that's Tahalmam.
Dr. House, can I add something?
Yes, please.
Yeah, while we were talking, I looked on the Google Maps, and from Bethel to El Hammam, it's just 25 miles. So we've all been able to see 25 miles when we've been out west or been up on a mountain.
That's no problem.
Seeing 75 to 90 is going to be a stretch. So supporting your position there.
Exactly.
And that's part of the issue. If you look at Bethel, I've stood there and looked over and seen Tal Hammam, and you clearly can see down into Jericho and look down into it. But I've stood there and I thought, how can I look through all of this stuff and see that far? Like I said, I need to be Superman to make it happen.
Mm.
So, and I don't think that Abraham and Lot had that capacity. So, and plus the issue of the well water, what it was called the Kefer. It's an open area like a table, and it's very, very green and lots of water. I've been out walking around the areas among the crops there before.
And that's because of the springs coming from underneath the ground rather than rain.
Right.
So I don't really see a big option there, but there are people who still contend that the southern side is the better site. A part of it relates to the mentioning of a town down there. We'll talk about later. But I found that when people move from one place to the other, sometimes they rename the place they used to live.
Mm-hmm.
We see that in Texas a lot. And there's other places, and even the word New York, comes from York.
Right.
Well, and sometimes you have to rename it because of what might be going on. Like I used to live in Illinois, now it's the People's Republic of Illinois. So
there you go.
I don't want to get into politics tonight, although I would enjoy it.
Well, we would agree with this particular.
Anyway, but I just wanted to give you an introduction to the issue, and then we'll go back and talk about Tal Hammam, because I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the other. A good friend of mine still hosts of that area of
southern end.
And he's held it as long as I've known him, but and that doesn't mean he's wrong. I mean, maybe something will come forward and we'll find more information. But unless you want to do deep sea diving in the salt sea, and it's not very helpful to do that.
No,
you'll just keep bobbing in the salt. Anybody ever been in the Dead Sea and floated around? I have,
and it burned really bad.
Oh,
it did burn. If you had the minor paper cut on your finger, it was major pain.
Well, I brought part of the Dead Sea back home with me.
Oh, did you?
I did, because you have this salt everywhere. This is clustering, and I just grabbed it. I actually hurt my hands a little bit and cut them. But I pulled the salt out of the side, and I took it back home as my part of the Dead Sea.
You're fully in the sea, disinfected.
Yeah, and well seasoned too. probably well seasoned.
Preserved.
Anyway, I wanted to use this map, even though it's not a very good one. At least you can sort of see what I'm talking about the distance and the angle and what you could see and couldn't see and so forth. Now, we're finishing off the end of this passage in Genesis. Lot lifted up his eyes, this wonderful nephew, and saw all the plain of the Jordan.
Right.
Then it was well watered everywhere. That is not true down at the bottom of the before Yahweh destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like the garden of Yahweh, like the land of Egypt. He's describing this. And as you go to Zohar, by the way, remember who wrote this passage, by the way? You forget? I forget. Who wrote the book of Genesis? Anybody know?
Moses.
Moses. And why would he know about Egypt?
I don't know.
Anyway, so you had to sort of put this thing into the background. Like the land of Egypt, as you go to Zohar, so Lot chose the plain of the Jordan for himself. He traveled east. That's what you have to do. Notice it doesn't say he traveled south, does it?
No,
it says he traveled east. And they separated themselves from one another. Abram lived in the land of Canaan, and Lot lived in the cities of the plain and moved his tent as far as Sodom. See, he didn't have to go that far. If you look at it, when you see Jericho below, you only got about, somebody said a while ago, 25 miles or something. And the men of Sodom were exceedingly wicked and sinners against Yahweh. You know what? One thing I find interesting in this story, and we're not going to go into theology and stuff here and all this other stuff, but it's interesting to me that Lot, who picked this land and he said, Abraham, I'll take this. I'll do a favor for you. And he went and became a person who sat at the gate of the city. That in the ancient world basically meant that he was part of the official leaders of the city.
Right.
Yeah. And so Lot had some problems, and we see later problems zipping up when he escapes and finally goes south, right? He has trouble. He has 2 daughters and no wife. So we'll wait on that one.
Sure.
Let's keep moving then.
So then he went south in his life, and then he went south geographically as well.
Yeah. His life went south, yes.
He finally went south, but it wasn't at the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this is a picture I found I thought was in this out of the Quran. This isn't out of the scripture. But they have a reference here to Lot. And he mentions about Lot and his wife and so forth. And he mentions, though, the raining of stones of layered hard clay is how he is expressed in the Quran. But we're going to mention in just a moment the fact that at Sodom you have a very special city as far as population at that time. Trade, lots of trade. It was probably maybe up to 10,000 people lived there is the estimation. If you think about the fact that Jericho only had, and people, I don't claim to know the exact figure, but just a little over 100 that the Israelites went around. But Sodom was a major city in the area. It had 5 cities around. Anybody see Lord of the Rings?
Oh yeah.
Did you notice you had a central city for the capital, so to speak, and then they had these outlying hills that people lived on, and they were able to warn when there's anybody coming.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? That's why I think you have a Sodom and Gomorrah, because there are about 5 different, I may be wrong on that, but I think there's about 5 different like outside areas that were inhabited with small, they're not small. I've climbed on top of them. They're not much more than what you see over in Jordan when you go to see where John the Baptist was killed, the area there. They have one that's very close to that. So they're little small cities. So let's move on. We're going to say something about the meteor explosion that took place. By the way, they're saying that, and the scientists, and I'm not going to spend a long time on this because, again, this is my area, but the scientists who were talking of this, I have a few notes down here, that when they examine the area around what we think of as Tal Hammam, that's the pronunciation, they discovered not that it had meteorites that came toward it, because meteorites tend to be a little small, burn up in the atmosphere, and they don't come down as the kind of major threat that you would think that you have with what we find in the northern area of Jordan there. In fact, they think it's what they call an air burst. Are you familiar with that?
I've heard of that. Yeah, that happened in, was it Siberia?
Irina can talk
Well,
about that. She lived near it.
Since you brought it up, how much time do I have? As it
Oh.
so happened to be, it was actually the area where I grew up.
Oh, okay.
Well, I was born in that area.
Mhm.
It was the city of Chelyabinsk, and I ended up getting my friends and my mom. People were talking. I saw videos of this, giant light going through even broad daylight, and then the massive explosion that took place. It actually. A lot of buildings were damaged as a result of it, and about 1,600 people got injured from like shrapnel and stuff. But the actual meteor fell. It was like a little, not a very large stone they recovered eventually. But I'm getting here with this message that that stone created almost like a nuclear explosion, like a ricochet, and the same scientist who went to Chelyabinsk area came to the Tal Hammam dig when we were there, and they gave a presentation, and I was just amazed the similarities they found.
Yeah.
And basically these were physicists that were from different parts of the world, and they said because of the asteroid belt and all of the shrapnel that come from there, sometimes it's it could be ice, sometimes that's what will cause airburst because there's nothing left, it just evaporates. In this case, it had a stone in it, and it was all burnt up. But
how big was it, Irina?
It wasn't big. It was probably, I want to say maybe, I don't know,
Size of a fist or a little bit?
No, it was more like a basketball, maybe.
Okay. Wow, I was thinking something like a car.
Yeah, I don't think so. So, and the reason that's significant is because every so often there's a certain kind of trajectory at which point the Earth enters that we're going to get hit with the meteors. And it's only predicted it's going to happen again. They're saying. So Sodom, the site of Sodom got hit pretty badly because what happened in Chelyabinsk was only like a tiny fragment of it.
Portion, yeah.
So the same scientists actually said, they went back and they looked and said, yes, it was about that time that is recorded in the Bible, in the Quran, that there was a huge meteor shower. And one more thing I'm going to mention, because I find it significant, which I believe it is the ancient site of Sodom. That's the Tal Hammam area, which, again, if it wasn't clear, it's essentially Amman, Jordan. So there's a place called Salt, of all names. And I may be skipping forward a little bit, but when the meteors hit, one of the things that the scientists explained that were visiting at the time, that the burst actually forced the seawater, the salt water, up into the plains to the point where there was like 200 years you could not plant anything, and that's the reason people had to leave.
Wow.
Everything was covered in salt.
Right.
So that's just the physics of the actual, meteor explosion. So.
Yeah.
I remember when we heard that, that kind of argument, scientific, seems to comport with what we see in the text.
Yeah, absolutely.
In which God brings fire and brimstone. That's a terminology in the scripture of the Quran. I'm trying to think what it says, but I think it uses something similar to that.
Yeah.
But you don't have that same kind of event that occurs in the south there. It's in the plain that we're thinking of as Sodom and Gomorrah today.
Right.
So I just think, and people differ, but I just think that makes a lot of sense when you put the issue of what we see in the fire and brimstone destruction of the
I do have to apologize real quick.
Oh, she's got
apparently
something.
It was pretty big, but you guys, I'll let you do your homework. This is about 20 meters now. That's
okay.
Wow.
I could be so, but if that's the case, nonetheless, anything coming from space. So I just wanted to make sure you know that. As far as the size of it, I wasn't sure.
You.
So anyway, they find evidence in the digging at Sodom that some of these kinds of results, so that what's left over
from
a massive airburst like that is found at that location.
Sure, makes sense.
That means that seems to fit with the scripture verse. There's what I see in the south.
Right.
So I think we'll move on to that then. Now, the thing that Lot's wife became a pillar of salt. I hope I don't burst any bubbles, but I don't question the fact that she was just absolutely inundated with salt.
Oh yeah.
Now, I don't think when it says that she looked back and she became a pillar of salt, it's really saying that, first of all, she was not following like 15 feet behind her husband and the girls. I think she was having a hard time leaving altogether. And Lot and the girls are moving south very quickly, probably. And she just keeps longing for the city. And I think she was probably a long distance from them. And when the thing hit, I think the salt deposits basically totally covered her. And that's what it's talked about, a pillar of salt.
It could be possible that if the Dead Sea portion was pushed out.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think her flesh actually probably became salt.
Right. She was
she
covered.
Officially so covered with it that it expresses it this way. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely.
She was a little salty.
Yeah, a little salty. Yeah, a little hot salty. She probably told Lot, "Hey, hon, I'll catch up to you."
Yeah, well, she waited too long. She stayed behind because see, when I think about this massive airburst that hits, and Lot and his daughters got away from it by going south. That when this happened to her, they had to be a pretty good distance apart. I mean, they're probably miles even.
Sure.
Based on those things coming down. So that's how I would interpret the text. Although you realize I'm an inerrantist of Scripture, but I do also recognize the fact that Scripture uses certain kinds of expressions.
Yeah.
Sometimes things that are sort of like even in parables, but not that. Well, what am I looking to say?
Metaphors.
I need my pastor to help me out. But somehow.
I did tell Dr. House this morning on the way to our men's Bible study that I'm glad that he did not produce any of these movies instead of Cecil DeMille or any of those guys, because it's so spectacular as a child to watch this woman running and just crystallize and pillar of salt. His is a much less dramatic thing, even though it might be more accurate. I don't know.
Yeah.
The Bible makes expressions sometimes in certain ways, and I don't think I would. I mean, if the Scripture really said she became a pillar of salt, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think that, if I may, there's a little bit of a kind of a clue in chapter 19 of Genesis, in verse 16 and 17, when the angels, it said that, and while he lingered, the men took hold of, this is Lot, the men, which is the angels, took hold of his hand, his wife's hand, and the hands of his two daughters, the Lord being merciful to him, and they brought him out and set him outside the city. Then, so it came to pass that when they brought them outside, that he said to them, telling Lot and his wife, his family, escape for your life. Do not look behind you, nor stay anywhere in the plain. So if you told them not to stay anywhere in the plain, there was an obvious reason for that.
James, that's a good statement. That helps a little bit on that.
So that kind of makes sense now.
Yeah. So anyway, I think what we have in Tahalmam is probably the right place. So let's keep moving then. And I want you to start seeing some pictures in a moment. Let's see. Now let's look at that just a moment. I want you to get perspective. We're talking here. Baba Dra is, you can see in the red, and it's okay. Mm-hmm. And Tahalmam is toward the north. And if you would basically understand, you can see the Sea of Galilee and the River Jordan coming down, and it ends at that very place. Matter of fact, there's a nice hotel to stay just about where that arrow is.
Oh boy,
I've stayed there before when I've been in some of these things.
Yeah.
So Tahalmam is a great site, and it seems to fit the bill. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to give you a perspective and looking at it from this angle. All right, let's keep moving. This is my friend Randall Price, a very good scholar and archaeologist, and he tends to accept Baba Dra, although I think maybe he might be convinced as information continues to come in.
But it's okay to be wrong sometimes.
I wouldn't want to tell Randy. See, Randy and I did that handbook on biblical archaeology together, and I'm going to have to rewrite his section. I haven't told him that yet.
Of course.
Just everybody else.
So this is the area. You can see how desolate it is over against what we're talking about
Pretty
with
much.
well-watered plain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, keep going.
Next.
Sodom. Now we're going to get a big look. We're going to talk about what I viewed now to be Sodom, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the other side. And we're going to look at this. You can see that the hill area there, it's a tall. By the way, of all the places that I've ever been, and I think this is actually the facts, that the only place that they use for the mound it's not a natural mound, but it's a mound that comes about by civilization coming in and gradually growing, like you have at places, or even in Israel, that they go by the word tall instead of tel. Everybody else says tel.
Right.
So that's when you say they're tall El Hamam.
We tell them that they're tall. Yeah.
All right.
So maybe it makes a distinction. This is a tall tell versus the
A tell. Exactly.
Instead of a short one.
instead of a short tell or tail.
Think about it, to archaeologies, anywhere you go in the archaeological digs, you're pretty much going to see the same pattern, and that is you have an older civilization on top of the next and the next. Why? Because there was a reason why it was established in the first place, and there was something convenient about the location. So you see a lot of these different mounds, including the current palace sitting just across the area. So the area we were digging in was part of the palace and the kitchen area. And it's kind of interesting even to think that just across the valley, there's an actual palace today. So there are reasons behind it why people chose to live there as opposed to somewhere else. And it was also a matter of protection too, because if you're living up on a hill, it's really hard to invade the city. And there were a lot of walls around it.
I think maybe we talked about that at the beginning. If not, we should have. Maybe we'll go back and talk about it. I've got a whole presentation of a PowerPoint going into the reasons why you do certain things in archaeology and what, for example, in Megiddo, you have it's better than 20. I hope somebody can help me on this, but I think it's better than like 20 civilizations have been there.
Wow.
They just keep building. It's not like what we do today. You take a big bulldozer and move everything out of the way and start from scratch. They actually built on civilization prior.
The ancient Troy was rebuilt like 9 times.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's what you encounter. So that the tail is a buildup, not of normal way, but not natural, but actually by civilizations building them up.
Layers, basically, right?
Layers, yes. Let's keep. Another look. This is looking as you can see, for example, location of Sodom near the top part of the Dead Sea. So it's not at the Dead Sea, but it's at the edge up, as I showed you in that map a little bit ago. And it's no big deal to get across there too much, except for trying to get through the guards. There's a whole story on that. They kept on trying to get me to look in these things, and my eyes would never. What was it? My eyes couldn't work with it. You remember that? They kept having me to move from stage to stage. They kept moving down for me to try a different one, and nothing worked. And trying to get
honestly, I don't remember what you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, but you see in the distance, you can see the site of Talamam, but we're going to get a lot closer than that. Some picture that may be one I took from the area up there in the north where all those kids were around. You remember that?
Oh, I see what you mean. I think you're talking about Mount Nebo.
Yeah, Nebo.
Right. I don't believe so. Yeah. I don't think that's from Mount Nebo, though.
Well, I have a picture I know that looks a long way over. It's several miles away.
So he does have another picture. I can attest to that. And there's a miraculous story because we were driving, riding the bus, and it was pouring cats and dogs, and we thought, how in the world we're going to get this beautiful shot. And as soon as we got there, it stopped raining and the sun was shining. It was probably the most perfect shot you can get, where you saw the promised land we could never enter. So he does tell the truth here. We do have that, but this is not the picture.
All right, let's keep moving.
Coming up.
Well,
different.
before that, we have a question that has just come in.
Oh,
Are you going to discuss the location of Zoar mentioned in Genesis 19:22? My map shows it is on the far south end of the Dead Sea.
that's the alternative one I showed you in the middle on that big arrow a while ago.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right.
And that is an alternative. But see, they share the same problems. Either one of those two sites that you want to talk about is in an area that is sort of unlike what you see in Talamam, because it's not a well-watered plain. You don't have the results of the science in reference to the air burst that hits there. Anything that's not up closer to the place that the water is coming up and the well-watered plains there, and you also have a trade center. That's not a large city like that with that many people would have been a major site for various people coming
trade route, right?
Items and buying things and the idea of going down to a salt area to try to build a structure,
right,
in a civilization is not very productive.
Right.
Also, remember that ancient civilizations, when we see a name city or town, it doesn't mean there's like millions of people. At the time, it was just a few thousand, and that was considered a city. So a lot of these neighborhoods, quote unquote, they were their own cities, which we would today consider like little villages, but they were considered major cities.
And even the statement that I gave you earlier, that you have these little bitty cities, so to speak,
right,
that surround Sodom fits the biblical text. You don't really see that down in the south.
Yeah.
Now, if something was in the south there and that's it, I don't know if they'll ever discover it, because how would you go down and actually do the archaeology seriously by being in the Dead Sea or in that area with the salt deposit? I just don't know how you would do it. But I don't think you need to worry about that, because I think the Talamam explanation makes the most sense anyway. So
right,
that's the reason I didn't deal with the other one, because it's the same problem.
exactly.
Continue. Looking at a cross, I'm just keep it moving. They just sort of a little bit of Jordan there.
No, that's okay. That's different.
Yeah,
Mount Nebo.
You're beginning to see water coming on that side. Remember what happens? The Sea of Galilee goes into the Jordan River, which goes into the Dead Sea. And so Talamam is toward the north of that. And you can see water in the background. Continue. We're getting closer. Portions of that are not well watered. Other portions are very well watered. And I was amazed when I went into the fields, and just everywhere I went, I was stepping in water. So that's getting closer to the mound as you see it. Now, let me just take a moment. Remember, from Jordan looking over, you're looking from across, you're looking east. And of course, that's what you see in even the statement with Abraham and them. You're looking east and heading out that way. And what you observe here then is that the actual place, and I didn't know this initially until I first started working there a little bit more, they uncovered the area that you would have had the upper city, or where the palace would be, and probably better accommodations and so forth. And as you move south, you move toward a little less than that. And that's moving into the area of the kitchen, which was where we did some work. And so you're looking from basically let me see if I can think of this, from a south eastern portion toward the other. So that's what you got. Yes.
I found the picture, but it's on my phone. That's like,
okay.
Maybe we'll.
We're going to get to a big view in just a second. Keep moving.
Question for you: wasn't it there's two cities mentioned, right? Sodom and Gomorrah. Were they considered like sister cities, or they just with just close proximity?
I wish I had the answer to you, but I've wondered about that very question myself. Right. Because I went to the place they said is Gomorrah, they think is, and I went and looked at some other places that surround it.
Right.
So you do have these cities around. So I'm thinking that's a pretty good description for if this city is a major city in the middle, it's sort of like our major cities. You'd have like a Chicago or something. You'd have a big city, and then you have suburbs where people are around, right? And I think that's what you have here.
these are the Mount Nebo or Dead Sea. Can you add those by any chance, or is that too
I've
late?
got some others coming up.
Okay.
Where's my stuff here? Okay. Let's see, you're seeing a little more now, right?
Mhm.
And so
Okay.
we're going to show you in just a moment where I was digging one time. It's sort of funny. But this now, we have a great drawing by Liam Rittmeyer. Have you heard of that name?
No.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, he's quite a he's like an architect. He did his dissertation at Hebrew University on the question of the like where the Dome of the Rock is, the ancient temple, and so forth. And he draws these things out. I'll be showing that to you toward the end. But this again is looking over toward Israel way, toward through Jericho.
Mhm.
But the again, the eastern portion of that is where the castle, not the castle, the palace was, and then toward the rest of the area. Continue. All right. Just giving you different angles. We're going to have a real big one in a minute.
There's an angle for you.
Let's see who that is. Let's see that. That's on site. That's Gary. Yeah.
And there's
That's
Steve
Indiana
behind.
Jones.
And this we were working with friends at the site.
Yeah, that's not Indiana Jones. That's Texas Jones.
That's right.
Now here is. I want to talk to this about this
Ooh.
with you a bit. Anybody done any work at any archaeological sites? I think I mentioned earlier. Was anybody?
Yeah.
It wasn't done this way in earlier archaeology. For example, when Garstein came to Jericho, it started years later, and Catherine Kenyon, she was quite a bit involved in this, on how do you approach an archaeological site. And one of the things you want to do is not destroy things. And so you don't go in there with the bulldozer and start digging everything up. That's how we would do it in America. But you have to go very slowly to go through piece by piece, side by side. You talk about every single thing you find, I don't care how small it is, to keep the record. And you draw a plat, even on like architecture's you know. So this is an example, just to give you a feel for it, where you have these little areas that have the wall around them. What they've done is they've just simply not gone into the whole thing and destroy it. They keep it so it's separated. And this is where they also keep, they take tons of pictures and they dig very slowly. You don't go through and just try to destroy anything. You try to find things.
They use like a square at a time. So everybody has their own square, and they basically work for several weeks in that square. And essentially, with like a little brush, sometimes that's how detailed it is. And then, like he was saying, there's something called the chain of custody you'd see in like justice, for instance. So that you know for a fact that if something's found, everybody, stops and everybody comes over and documents it. And then, so there's no confusion as to where it came from and where it went to.
One thing that happened in architecture, and this has something to do with Gabi Berkai, my friend. His name was Gabriel, the angel, but it went by Gabi. When the Muslims decided on the top of the Temple Mount that they wanted to build another, they already had two mosques. They wanted to have another mosque underneath the Temple Mount, and so they built an elaborate thing inside. They took out hundreds of, now they're not gigantic dump trucks, but they took hundreds of dump trucks of materials out of there down to a place called Gehenna. Are you familiar with that term?
Sounds familiar.
I've heard it once or twice.
Yeah, a couple times.
In the Valley of Gehenna, I mean, it comes out of the Kidron Valley, coming down in the Cheesemaker Valley. You have all these. You have three basic groupings that come by the city of Jerusalem down into this area, and they just dumped everything in there, and that looked to be, first of all, a real negative. But something good came out of it, because Gabi, he put together a sifting organization. And I think you went with me to one of those times, right? And so a lot of people helped in this. What they did, they take portions.
250,000 people participated
over
time.
That many?
Yes.
I didn't know that. So you have this sifting area he put together, and you can go there as a non-specialist in archaeology and just help out. And because there's things you can learn to sift, like you would with like a flour in a sifter, you know.
Yeah.
And so they would pour water and they would do sifting, and they would find things like rings that went back to the time of like David. They would find any number of kind of charms and information. You always find clay
pottery, right?
Containers everywhere.
Yeah,
you find some of that are broken, but they have found materials all the way back to the very earliest period of Jerusalem there, all the way up through the modern era.
Crusaders.
And the Crusader period.
That's
and so
what
forth.
Oh, nice.
You and the reason I'm mentioning that, because you normally take such good care at these places because you're trying to keep the information intact and know where everything is that people lived in. And so there's things you want to find here. But what the sifting thing did is, since they put all that down there in the Valley of Hinnom, they have made many important discoveries that now are in the museums even. So it's Gabi had a lot to do with putting all that together. And
nice.
So I just wanted to bring. I told you at the very beginning. I don't know if you heard that. My dear friend, we just we were doing together, and
wow,
going to do, and unfortunately that's all gone now. But
so basically, you can get a lot of info from a garbage dump, huh?
Yep.
Yes. And yes, you can find it if you look what people have been throwing away.
That's right.
Anybody recognize anything there?
Where did they say?
There's Texas Jones there.
Yep, that's right. Do you see what it's written in there?
Yeah. There it is.
I said that I think this is AI. I can't imagine Dr. House with a shovel in his hand.
Oh. This is before AI.
No, this was one of my earlier times I went there to do work.
Okay.
And we were out there digging, but I just couldn't help when I looked at that. I thought I need to put something that sort of makes that a little funny, because we were joking out there about, we're digging all this stuff. Is there anything of worth?
Yeah.
With all this dirt.
You got that one. Oh, what is that? You got that one person looking the wrong way. It's over here, guys.
Yeah. So anyway, but I want here's the work of Liam. Look at the bottom, Liam Rittmeyer.
Nice.
And he does some really wonderful work. And if you look at how he's constructed it, can you see you have a lower city and an upper city? Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so we worked. I never worked in the upper city, but I did work in the lower city and outside the city, also trying to find some other things. We were trying to find a temple and also like an administrative building where we were working.
Yeah, we were just in the kitchen.
Yeah, when we went together, we were just in the kitchen.
Good place to be.
That's appropriate, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Always be in the kitchen to eat.
Exactly.
That's where cooking took place only.
Okay, but he does really fine work. If you've ever seen his materials,
you've shown us some of his stuff before, which is really cool.
Yeah. So go to the next one. I think this may be the last one. I'm not sure.
What?
This right here is the city gate that you come in. Now you notice how it's built here, because in all the ancient cities, including Jerusalem and places like Jericho and so forth, you always had towers and so forth you work from, and you can figure out why, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it gives you a good place to be to avoid getting shot. No, actually, they would shoot down, and a higher place gave you a place you could shoot arrows and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But this is an idea that he devised, that he says this is probably how the ancient city area was developed. Right?
Nice.
As far as a protection.
Mm-hmm.
So you can think now that Lot was sitting out there.
Oh, yeah. Right. Probably in those porticos.
I think that's the last one.
That's the last one.
Now, we've got just a few minutes left, not many. Any particular questions on this that we didn't cover?
I have a question.
Yes.
So how far would El Hammam be from modern day Amman, Jordan?
Not far.
It would be Amman, Jordan today, and I've stayed there and done things there. So I've been there a few times. Is actually due east of where we've seen Taha Amman.
It would take about 20 to 30 minutes, I think,
Yeah,
to ride there.
driving it.
Probably be 10 miles away or something.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
far.
I don't know.
I was in Amman once years ago, but I was there on business. I wasn't looking at archaeology. I wish I'd known these things then.
Well, of course, you wouldn't have probably, even if you had, gone back the other way, there would be nothing except there would be a tail there that hasn't been excavated.
At the time, we were not allowed to share any information because it was still an ongoing project. And then finally, Steve Collins finalized it and wrote a book on that. And it's been published only recently. And when we go to like Albuquerque, New Mexico, for instance, at the conference, that's where it was shared last time about the discoveries. And that's when we met some of our people who came, the scientists, the meteorologists.
Okay. How far back is the information?
I was there in 1980 when I was in Amman.
It wasn't ongoing.
How recent was the information?
I think they had 7 seasons of working.
It was
there.
about 10 to 7, but
yeah, something like that.
The most recent would be probably, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago was actually just published.
But when it first was released to the public?
That's about when it was first released.
About 10 years ago? Or
yeah, things were kept fairly quiet until
10.
they had a chance to really do some work and figure
no more than 5.
Oh, wow. So it's very recent then.
Very recent.
Yeah. So you got to be careful because a friend of ours by the name of Stripling, he's up here. He's up here. I always think up. It's down toward Houston area.
Okay.
And they found something. I was talking to him one day about this, and I want to give you a feel for archaeology. Because he was on a place between 2 mountains, and one was a place that was called the Mount of Blessing and the Mount of Cursing. It's found in Joshua, where they would actually go back and forth. And if you obey God, this happens to you. If you don't obey God, this happens to you. Back and forth between these 2 mountainsides. That's actually in the biblical text.
Right.
And they were up there on this one mountain that there were some questions about, and they actually began to dig. They found an altar there. And then they was looking through the dirt, and archaeologists don't mind getting in the dirt because you have to. That's where the things are hidden. And they actually discovered something. He told me that he had to, there's this little thing they found, just tiny bitty, that it looked like a rock or something. They couldn't figure out what it was. And they kept washing it and cleaning it. Until finally,
it went through probably 3 or 4 or 5 attempts to sift through, not knowing it was there, but they would not put anything away any longer.
Yeah, they don't throw. So they went through, I think he told me 10 times, but maybe I'm wrong. The fact is they watered, washed it and tried, and finally they discovered the name of God on it. It became the earliest ever finding of the name of God, Yahweh, found on something in the land of Israel.
I think it was the tablet of Cursing.
And so, it's interesting how you go about this. You have to be very patient. If you're not, you won't make any progress because
they won't
you'll destroy something. They'll kick you off the site.
You become a relic.
So anything else that we haven't talked about? If not, I told you next time we're going to come back and start from the north in Israel and start covering the cities and talking about different ones of them as we go down, like Beth Shean, like some of these other kind of places up Nazareth and on and on. We'll go through various cities and discuss them, but I'll probably take more time then talking more about some of the artifacts that have been found.
So I do have a question. So we just don't know a whole lot about Gomorrah. Is that what I'm taking away from this?
Yeah, there's not a lot there to see unless they were to really sort of dig it down to the bottom. It's sort of a hill. And it's a small thing. And I suppose somebody could do that. Maybe they'll find something if they did. But you have these 5 cities, I think it is.
Surrounding
and so, to my knowledge, they haven't found anything spectacular there because it's just it's a big enough task itself to go and do the digging at Sodom.
Sure.
So let me chime in on this one. Yes, like he's saying, it's extremely difficult to do an archaeological dig, especially in the Middle East because of the weather. Like the times we dug was very winter time. You cannot do it in the summertime. It's impossible. Some days we would go out in the bus ready to go, and they said, nope, got a route, go back because of the sandstorms. So we would encounter issues that were not necessarily predicted, but each day that happens, it cuts into the dig, and then you must stop at a certain time. So it's very costly, very expensive, very, very difficult and time consuming. As much as you would have to have archaeologists and engineers and architects come together and say, perhaps this is the next area or mountain where
Right.
the Gomorrah may be just right there next mountain, but in order to do so, it's a lot of work.
The next place we're thinking about going to is probably we've been there not to dig, but to visit and so forth. I've been there probably 3 or 4 times. You've been there, I think, once, though.
No, I've been there more than once.
More
Shiloh.
than once? Twice?
You talking
Shiloh?
about Shiloh?
I thought so. Yeah,
No.
Shiloh. And they're finding some pretty cool stuff there. So that's probably a good site that we're looking at maybe going to.
Cool.
Anyway, and if you can get it, by the way, people love you to come on archaeological digs.
Yeah.
All you have to do is pay for your own
Yeah,
travel.
bring your money.
Bring your own food, your own everything.
Space,
No, they'll feed you.
and you can work for free. If you'll do all of that, then you can get a job there.
All for
Anything
fun.
else before we part? But we're going to start probably in the north. I'm thinking about either Shiloh or maybe someplace up that way, Nazareth or something. Okay.
I was wondering, when the comet exploded above Russia in 1908, it leveled every tree for 830 miles and, it blew them away from it. I know it's been 4,000 years, but are there any signs left of, trees, what's left of them spread out in that?
It's interesting you ask, because the school I went to in the Urals, my director or the principal of the school, his name is Vladimir, he spearheaded that expedition to refer to Tungusk meteor area, Siberia. So he was there, and he and the crew some very interesting phenomena. He said that there was a huge crater, and there were trees standing all directly around the crater, but all the other trees were lying down. The reason they attributed to it is it's that suction effect. Like I said, it's like a nuclear explosion. It hits, and then it sucks the air out and bursts out. So yes, they absolutely found that, and he shared that with us. He even had a museum in the school, geological museum. It's still there. You could probably look it up online. They found like mammoth tusks and such. But yes, that's what he described.
Right.
But there was no rock. That was the ice part of it that melted.
Wow.
Well, I think we're probably gone out of our time. Don, is that correct?
Yep, we're at the end of the time. So
okay, so we'll see you next week, I hope. We'll have something together for you. And if you have any friends that would like to watch this also, we are sort of young at this still. So we'll grow as we continue. So
all right.
Sounds
if you
good.
have anything, sure, it's a real blessing to have you, each and every one of you. And particularly see Dick come back to us. I'm really good to see you.
Night all.
All right.